In today's episode of What's the Dill, we are going to be talking about my personal health update, a pastor who used crypto to scam millions out of people, media companies who are dissolving before our very eyes, and the United States Council of Bishops' call for Christian unity. We are going to jump right into today's episode, starting with a health update on my face, my Bell's palsy, my health journey, however you want to call it. You can call it whatever you want, because I don't really have a good name for it. But went to the doctor the other day, and went to a neurologist, like a specialist, and it was a good visit. Overall, doctors are still trying to figure out why and what and how I got like this. There's some competing information, which can always be a little bit frustrating, but seems like there's nothing too serious. I'm gonna actually get an MRI to make sure that there's no anything serious, deep, in my head and my brain. But that's just as a precautionary. Doctors are very certain that it's nothing very severe that's caused this Bell's palsy. But I had a really funny moment with the doctor, the neurologist. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I go to a doctor, these tests that they do, sometimes I feel like there's right or wrong answers, and I need to, get the right answer. Or sometimes I can get a little bit confused, because it can be hard. I can get a little bit confused by some of their questioning, what they're trying to do. So, for example, I'm sitting in the doctor's office, and I am telling the PA that's there before all of these, all of these things. They're asking those questions. They're like, all right, so did you hear a ringing in your ear? And I'm like, well, after loud music, I hear ringing. They're like, no, not loud music. Do you hear a ringing in your ear? I was like, no. I mean, I have heard a ringing in my ear. They're like, okay, so in regards to your Bell's palsy, do you hear a constant ringing in your ear? And I'm like, no. Next question. Nailed that one. Okay, took a little bit, but we nailed that question. Then they're like, okay, do you feel a pain in your ear? I'm like, yeah. Sometimes I sleep on my ear, and I feel like it bends for a few hours, and then I wake up, and there's like a pain right there. The guy's like, that's not what I'm talking about. Are you feeling a pain behind your ear? I'm like, actually, I kind of am, I think, on the account of the Bell's palsy. Then they ask this doozy, this question, which always stumps me. Anytime a doctor or medical professional asks me this next question, it always stumps me. Is the pain dull or is it sharp? And I'm like, darn it. How do you describe a sharp pain? What is dull? What is achy? They're like, does it feel like a pinch? I don't know, I'm trying to think of my ear right now. Is there a pain? Well, it could be classified as a pinch, I guess. No, I guess it's dull. Let's just put dull for now. And the PA's like, I'm putting dull, it's staying as dull. And like, I have these moments with these doctors and PAs and nurses. I just get so like worked up sometimes in the doctor's office, and I feel like I'm giving wrong answers, even though it's about me. I feel like I maybe need to give like a right answer, or I don't want to give the wrong answer. So that was funny. So then the doctor comes in. And I don't know about you guys, but if they ever do tests, like with my body, like scans or this or that, like I never know how much or how far to go. So the doctor at one point, he's like, all right, I'm trying to do some tests for your eyes and your brain connection. He's like, all right, like, he's like, touch my finger. So he's standing in front of me, and he's like, all right, touch my finger. He's like, touch my finger. So I kind of, okay, I touch it. Then he stands like 5 feet back from me. I'm sitting in a chair. And he holds out his finger, and he's like, all right, touch my finger. And so I just kind of reach out, and I'm like 3 feet from him. And I'm like, okay, here I am, I can't touch it. He's like, well, you can lean closer to me and touch it. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I can do that, doc. I can touch your finger. And like, I saw him like have a little smile on his face, because he's like, yeah, like, the goal is just touch my finger. And I didn't know if I was supposed to sit or this, and I felt so stupid, because I was like, trying to like reach without moving my body. I was like, oh, come on, I can almost touch your finger. And he's like, you can lean if you need to. Oh yeah, past that. Easy, doc, got it. And then, like, sometimes, they'll do like, he was doing these tests on me. So he's doing this test on me like, all right, so make muscles like this, like put your arms like this, and then try to not let me push you down. And so I'm like, well, I don't want to hurt this guy's feelings, so I'm not gonna go 100%. I'm gonna go 60%. So he's kind of pushing me down a little bit. And he's like, all right, well, try as hard as you can. Then as soon as he says that, I'm just like, whoa, like lift my arms. So he kind of like steps back a little bit. I was like, doctor, I'm sorry. I'm very confused about these directions. I don't know exactly what or how much I'm supposed to do. And he didn't like fall super back, but I sometimes never know the exact like level of effort to give or what exact they're saying these tests. I always said maybe I'm getting like they're trying to do a test to me and I'm maybe getting confused by the test. Is that just me? Do any of you guys get confused in tests in doctor's offices? It was funny to me, but overall, health is looking good. Appreciate all of you that have reached out. Thank you again for all the well wishes, all the prayers. I really appreciate it. So I'll fill you in more on, the MRI and any future updates. The neurologist said that I'm probably going to be like this for probably a couple months at least. So just got to do the work, do the massages on my face and all this different PT I have to do. And I think I might go see a physical therapist for exercises and, my chin and do all these different types of exercises. We'll see. But just hanging in there, staying positive. So I thought for me that was a pretty funny little story about like my doctor's visit this past week. So that's the update on me. All right, so want to get into a story I saw online this week. And it involves a pastor, crypto, and hearing God's voice. I'm going to link the video right here so we can just watch this. And you can see the video without me and really, and then, see the video for the context. So I'm going to play it right now.
We launched an exchange. The exchange technology failed. Things went downhill. And from that point forward, we've just been waiting on the Lord literally for a miracle. So the charges are that Caitlin and I have pocketed $1.3 million. And I just want to come out and say that those charges are true. So there's been $1.3 million that's been taken out of, I think it was a total of $3.4 million. But out of that 1.3, $500,000 went to the IRS, and a few $100,000 went to a home remodel that the Lord told us to do. So how this whole thing started is the Lord told us in 21 to walk away from our marketing company, and He said, I'm going to do a new thing. And then He took us into this cryptocurrency. It was a different cryptocurrency other than index coin at the time. Well, that cryptocurrency turned out to be a scam. And so the Lord says, give that to them, but also give them a 10x. And I'm like, well, where's this liquidity going to come from? And the Lord says, trust me. Well, as money is coming in, we would be sowing it. And at first it was hundreds of dollars and thousands of dollars, then tens of thousands of dollars. Money would come in, we tithe, we sow, more money would come in. And so we were just always under the impression that God was going to provide, that the source was never ending, that God was doing a new thing, and that we had nothing to worry about. We sold a cryptocurrency with no clear exit. We did. We took God at His word and sold a cryptocurrency with no clear exit. And so the prosecutors had to take that and say, these people willingly sold a cryptocurrency with no clear exit. What we're praying for and what we're believing for still is that God is going to do a miracle. God is going to work a miracle in the financial sector.
As you saw in the video, this pastor, who I don't know at all, never heard of this pastor, don't know where he's a pastor, whatever, Protestant church he's a pastor at. Him and his wife got involved in some sort of crypto scam where they made a business with crypto, made a bunch of money, but now we're getting charged for scamming people that they encourage to buy the crypto. Now, I'm not trying to dunk on this pastor because obviously it's easy. It's easy to like really dunk on this pastor. Hey, this is so, how could you do this? You're whatever. So it brought up a really good question for me, which is like, how do we discern God's voice? Now, what I do know is that like God's going to speak to us all differently. He's going to use the things in our lives, the people in our lives, the events in our lives, the prayer in our lives, the circumstances to talk to us. He's going to use anything to speak to us. But what I am certain of is that everything God is telling us or revealing to us or wants us to do is always going to be rooted in drawing closer to Him. So, how do we discern God's voice? How do we know God's talking to us? I got a big decision. Should I do this crypto company? Should I do this? Should I go there? Should I do all these things? We're always asking, what should I do, God? The most certain thing is that God is always calling us closer to Him. So our actions, our decisions are always going to be things that are drawing us closer to Him, to better serve Him. And sometimes it's going to benefit us really well. It's going to be, hey, that's great. I'm discerning if I should, date this girl that I really like and she likes me. This is so great. Sometimes, though, it's going to break us out of our comfort zone. Hey, I'm going to have to move across the country for my job. And I'm bringing my family there. But I feel like this is something that's good for our family. It's going to draw us closer to Christ. Hey, I'm actually going to go to a different college. I'm going to go to this college that's closer to home instead of the one farther away from home because there's really good support at the college closer to home. I'm not going to take that job that requires me to work 80 hours a week for more money. I'm going to take that job with less money that's a more balanced schedule because I'm going to be able to be with my friends, family, kids a little bit more, have a better life, a better work-life balance. And that way I can, serve God more. So I'm going to sacrifice some money to be able to live my life better and draw closer to Him. So this is what I've learned, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But it's also what I believe to be true, is that in our decisions, there's never like a perfect decision. God's going to use all things for the good for those who follow Him. But there's never going to be this perfect decision like, okay, if I go to this college, then I must major in this, and that's because what God wants me to do, and then I must graduate with this degree, then I must get a master's, then I must get this job, then I must marry this person, then I must have this many kids, because we're not able to get it perfect. We're not able to follow God perfectly. But what I do know is that we should always be asking ourselves the question, does this draw me closer to God? And that's going to be a good anchor for how we can discern God's voice. So when I hear this pastor say, God told us to make this crypto company, and then God told us to build this house, to take out $100,000 to build this house, and then God told us to do this, and now we're praying for God to pull a miracle out. It's like all of those things benefited Him. And in none of it did I hear anything like, hey, none of it sounded like it benefited anyone in his congregation, or there was no kind of discernible way of how it drawed closer to Christ. I'm not saying God didn't tell this pastor to do these things, but God's never going to get us in a jam. Following God's never going to get you in a criminal jam, where now you're getting charges against you. You're like, hey, well, I followed God, so I need a miracle. It's like, maybe I was hearing the voice I wanted to hear, and that voice was me, and it was not God. When I hear the things of God told me to do this, God told me to do this thing that then I made $1 million for. For me, I'm always like, okay, maybe there's a level of that. But now it's like, well, what are you doing with it? Because that's not the end goal. The end goal is not to make $1 million. The end goal is to then use that as a tool to draw yourself closer and other people closer to Him. That's a responsibility. So to hear, oh, we made $1 million off this crypto thing, and then we built our own house, I was kind of waiting for that we invited people into our house to use for our church, or we then ran food drives out, something. Because if you're saying God did something that great for you, you have to do something with it. And this is personal responsibility in our country is just at an all-time low. But I think it can be really, really poisonous to use God and hearing God, and God told me to do this kind of above reproach response to justify the things we want in our lives. Don't use God as a way to justify the things you want that are for your gain. Don't use God for your gain. If we're Christians and we say, we're trying to chase after God, we can't get involved in $1 million crypto financial schemes. And then expect God to pull off some miracle, like He said. It's that's not how God works. God works through us shedding our own ego and own pride to see His plan for us. And we're gonna get blessed from that. Like it says in Matthew 5, seek first the kingdom of God and all these things shall be given unto you. We have to seek God first. Not just say, great, I'm seeking God in some capacity, and now I'm just going to get the things I want. I go to church on Sunday, so now I can then, the other days of the week, go get whatever I want. I pray sometimes, so now I'm going to go get whatever I want, no matter what, at any cost. That's not how God works. That's not how we hear God's voice. So, pulling this all together, a lot of times we have to make sure when we discern God's voice, I have found in my life, it's that it's drawing us closer to Him. Is this choice drawing me closer to God? Is this life decision, not just like, hey, is this hamburger drawing me closer to God? But like, hey, is this big life decision of something big with my job, my family, my college, my school, my relationships? Is this drawing me closer to God? The answer, actually, that can be pretty clear, yes or no. That I feel like is easier to discern yes or no rather than should I do this thing or not. And then, as always, as we're discerning these big decisions, you can always crack open the Bible and there's going to be a lot of relevant stories and a lot of things that Jesus said, direct quotes, that will help discern our decisions. So, this idea of discernment of big life choices really came to my mind when I saw this video. And I wanted to pass it along to you guys because I wanted to hear what you guys think, how you discern big life decisions. But also, let's commit to ourselves. Let's not use God to justify the things we want in our lives. Let's not use God's name to justify, the worldly things we want. Moving on, something a little more cultural. Sports Illustrated basically gutted their entire editorial staff. Basically, Sports Illustrated is a shell of what it was. Sports Illustrated is the preeminent sports magazine. It's been around for 85 years, and this week basically fired all of its writers, its picture takers. I think has like a couple people on staff. But as of right now, the Sports Illustrated that we know is on life support. I don't want to say is not around anymore, but is basically on life support. And man, I thought that was such a shame. And then as I was doing more research on Sports Illustrated, I saw a lot of other media organizations that are just struggling on life support. Washington Post and LA Times lost tens of millions of dollars last year. Pitchfork, the music publication, basically fired a bunch of writers and got absorbed into a different company and is on a totally different creative direction. A lot of media is dissolving before we know it. It's great. So, in all that, let's start a podcast and start Backseat Media, right? Perfect. Perfect timing. But I thought that was such a shame because Sports Illustrated was such a big part of my childhood growing up. I mean, I obviously have talked about sports in this podcast, and I love sports, and I loved reading Sports Illustrated growing up. I can remember specific articles that I read growing up. I remember, Jorge Posada, Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Andy Pettitte on the cover, the core four. I remember reading their biographies on there. I remember Rick Riley's. He was the last page on every Sports Illustrated. And, wrote about the so many great different stories. The mosquitoes in Africa, the Nets campaign that he did. I remember these stories. I also remember for me growing up, there was a lot of great writing in journalism, and I used to look up the words I didn't understand. I used to memorize them. Like, okay, this is a great way to, build my vocabulary as like an 11-year-old. And then I would see those words on my grammar and English tests. And I was like, I know that word. Thank you, Rick Riley. Thank you, whatever writer. And so, I thought that was such a shame. And Sports Illustrated is like an absolute institution in the sports world. And for it to basically be on life support and not have any staff writers or whatever it is right now, I'm kind of doing this at the moment. The news kind of just broke. So, however many official writers they have, it's Sports Illustrated is not going to be like what it was. And so for me, it was sad to see Sports Illustrated basically just be in a free fall. And then, Pitchfork was always a fun, to read for music. And, I don't really read LA Times or Washington Post, but some other, business insiders basically tanking. And, it's just crazy. It's crazy to think that, media publishing companies are having a really hard time staying afloat. And, in a time, as you're watching this on some communication platform, and in a time where there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of fake news, communication is really, really powerful. It's a really powerful tool, and media is a really powerful tool, and it can be used for a lot of good. And so to see kind of these institutions kind of failing and falling is just wild. But also that inspires me to keep using media as a tool for God's kingdom, and to see what happens. I mean, I'll be honest, starting these things with Bags Media and What's the Dill, like, I don't really know what that means for the future, but I do know that I'm not supposed to worry about, big enterprise companies that are failing. That has nothing to do with me and what we're doing here over this podcast right now. So, sad news to see for a lot of sports fans out there, including myself, this week with the gutting of Sports Illustrated. Okay, last story. So the Council of Bishops came out this week, said it's a week of prayer for Christian unity. And that spoke to me very deeply. Connecting both the last story of media that we just talked about and the week for prayer for Christian unity spoke to me very deeply, and I'll explain. First, I'm just going to sip of my tea. Y'all don't even know that I basically have like a tea right outside of the frame every week that I need to drink and sip on, because your boy's throat gets a little bit scratchy when he's recording these. Okay, so what I thought was so powerful about the week of prayer for Christian unity, and why it's so important, is because as I do What's the Dill and Backseat Media, and have pumped out content onto the internet for the past couple of years, I see so much division between Christians online. Now, I want to talk about this. First and foremost, we all know that online is not the real world. It's kind of like a snapshot. It's not the whole thing. So, fights that are happening online is not the equivalent of two Christians having a fist fight outside of a church, in the church parking lot. I understand that. But I have noticed, and it's broke my heart, is how much division there is between Christians online, between Catholics and Protestants, between Catholics and Catholics, between Christians, and other religions. But there is so much division, and there's so much finger pointing, and there's so much hatred. Catholic, I'm a Catholic Christian. You all know this. And, as online Catholics, we get it. We get it big time. We get it from, atheists. We get it from Protestants. We get it from other Catholics. I mean, man, we are taking a licking online. Now, I actually, don't... It's funny, I actually don't get super bothered. I don't weep for the world because I see arguments in the comments, because I know that people, lash out in a comment section, and that's, not real life. People are keyboard warriors. They're going to be tough and maybe, pour all of their emotions into a comment section because they feel like it's not real. But I've had a lot of hate and a lot of anger thrown my way online, and I'll be honest, I love it. It fuels me. I love reaching out to people who are like, dude, you're a statue worshiper, you Catholic, you evil. Then I feed off of it. I do not get bothered one bit. I think maybe it's because I didn't have social media as a kid, and now I have it as an adult. Maybe I'm a little older, and I just people, I just understand also intrinsically that someone that's coming at me in the comment section, it's just a reflection of how they feel. It's nothing to do with me. So I've also tried to use hate comments and disinformation and fake news to really as an opportunity to evangelize and reach out. And what I have found is that when someone directs a hate comment towards me, and I just reach out with kindness and, hey, how's your week? What do you mean by this? Hey, I would say 8 times out of 10, they are open to hearing my perspective on things. Usually ends with a agree to disagree, but usually the walls come down. 2 times out of 10, it's maybe a no response because they maybe want to get a reaction out of me. But I have found that what I've learned from this experience of treating people, this is what I've learned from hate comments online. Treating people with love and content, going above and beyond to treat those who are yelling at me with love goes a long way for unity. And when we fight fire with fire between us Christians, we're not going to get anywhere. And it's just there's enough fighting. There's enough finger pointing. And I felt like when I read this message from the U.S. Council of Bishops, I was like, this should be an opportunity for us to just chill out. This is a message for all of us to chill out online. Let's have Christians be the model for unity. Because if people who aren't Christians went into Christian videos and Catholic videos and saw the comments, they'd be like, see, they fight just like all of us. This is no example of faith. This is no example of love. These are just people fighting online. And how terrible is that? That if an atheist came into the comment section of one of my videos, I'll say online, particularly on TikTok, and saw the fighting, they would have all the ammunition they would need to be, that's no example of following Christ. Aren't you supposed to be different? And the answer is yes, we are supposed to be different. We are supposed to try more, to love more. But we let our humanity and we let our sin dictate too much of how we treat other people. We let our weakness and our insecurity and our pride dictate too much of how we treat other people, particularly online. So, as Christians, we need to be the leaders and on the forefront of unity. And so I'll try to link this kind of publication, this article that the bishops put out about this week of prayer for Christian unity, because it's important. Pope Francis wrote a good little, particularly about online. So Pope Francis wrote about kind of the responsibility of online journalists and online publications. And I would even go to say, as being a Christian online, it says that reporting on the solid rock of responsibility and truth rather than the fragile sand of gossip and ideological readings. I mean, fragile sand of gossip and ideological readings. I mean, is that not so many arguments online? Is that not so many comment sections? Just fragile sand of gossip and ideological readings, ideological fightings. And so, for me as someone who, I don't know why, I feel like God has gifted me with an ability to not take things personally online. I don't know. I just I love when people say, because I can reach out and maybe break through to people. And I've done it a lot of times, and to reach out and have some great combos of people who maybe disagree with me or tried to, dunk on me for something. But I think that we as Catholics, we really need to be on the forefront of this and to be in the forefront of unity, and Protestants also need to be there for the ride to, call for unity. Because we know that unity comes from God and division does not. So when there's seeds of division, when there's gardens of division that we see online, we know that's not rooted in God. Even if you say you're a Catholic, even if you say you're a Christian, even if you say you love God, division, that's not coming from God. And we have to know that. And we have to be able to recognize it, then cast it out, and then put in its place something better, like truth, love, beauty. So we can't just fall into the pits of despair, the pits of arguments, the pits of ideological, the pits of ego, ideological fights, ego. Let's be better. Let's be an example to the world. Because of us as Christians, if we're not an example to the world of unity, who's going to be? So, that's all, off my soapbox. That's all I'll say about that. But, so that is the episode for this week. I appreciate you all, as always. Thank you so much for checking in. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this video, share this podcast. However you're listening or watching to this, share with a friend, share with someone who you think would like it. I appreciate you all so much. I'll see you all next week. Peace.